Synergetic Journal, video number 59, March 26, 2026. The Truth of All Conceptuality. Christina Herlofson, Synergetics Research Project. From October 6, 2012. Inspired in part by a Netflix documentary, Tell Me, and I Will Forget. South Africa's parametrics face a surge of violent crime and historic social change 15 years since the end of its oppressive apartheid era. So we can wonder about what may happen after the end of the Iranian Islamic era, despite all the war and intentions of regime change and what else. So ingrained in our psyche, subconsciously redirected understanding of whatever teachers taught us and our generations about what their educators valued concerning the survival of its convincing power, designating it as the only reality, then any of us may have great difficulty with perpetuating the communication of a consistent recognition of the truth of a conceptuality. The truth of all conceptuality has to have frequency and angle. The angle aspect has to do with the circuitry design. This may begin to explain why we write, read, record, conveying our thinking in regenerations of what we thought is important and, although by an as yet indiscernible degree of consciousness, as the generalization our intellect intuits, more must be said. This means more will always come from the process of communication, but it will not necessarily elucidate the missing elements on a consistent basis concerning the truth of all conceptuality. We recently recognized the law of truth is tetrahedral of the 4 planes of symmetry and 4 dimensions, not the 3 dimensions of our inherited reality education and its exclusive 3-dimensional matrices. In this sense of awareness, evolution with universe's tetrahedron assembly in mind, we can rely on it for communicating what conceptual and reasoning faculties subconsciously and consciously adjust a priori thought to as a type of consistently renewing reset. Synergetics 260.20. Still, at this awareness evolution insight, we are beset by the enormity of the earlier conceptions that are memories stored in our individual brain, its mind-brain functioning, its subconscious controlling cautionary concerning the authority of the teacher. As silly as this seems to our comprehensively astute advanced education, it is a fact of the situation and condition response that is typically expected during the communication of ideas in a problem-solving process. The teacher holds great power over our generation. So much so that what the teacher knows about primarily sets the subsequent reality basis, which can result in a culmination of conflicting or complementary factors at great cost or great saving. The conceptuality of it, in other words, is critical. If our teacher knows the truth of this, we will learn that at minimum, the conceptuality of all truth is universe, uppercase U, universe's tetrahedron and its 4 planes of symmetry coinciding with the vector equilibriums, 4 great circles that correlate to a conceptual model of circuits. Therefore, it is closer to recognition of the circuitry design of nature's coordinate system than not knowing of this at all. The manifest educations of our political, religion, coordinated, subconsciously driven sense of reality nonetheless got us to this particular insight. It is interested in the law of truth on one hand, and on the other hand, an unwillingness to let go of the XYZ rectilinear coordinate system despite its failure to accommodate the finite resolution essential for our advanced civilizations, progressively, not to be confused with the regressive political manipulations, progressively integrative and conceptual propensities referential to what any child can see when closest packing equal spheres. Two equal spheres, that is, two unit radius spheres in tangent, see compel. The drawing had to add more spheres, which can be linear or spherical, as the teacher is subconsciously concerned and transmits the cautionary impulse to the child's anticipations about what comes next. What if we just fill all space with equal spheres? What will happen at the blackboard or the paper the child is drawing spheres? Will it look like circles spread out across the area? Will we purposely close pack 2, 3, 4 circles like the automobile Audi logo? Could this not also be while we are not thinking of the circles as circles, but actually as spheres? Will we close pack 3 spheres to form a triangle? Will we add a fourth equal size sphere atop the 3, forming a tetrahedron? Will we draw one sphere, adding 6 equal size spheres around it, showing a hexagon? Vector lines from sphere center to sphere center are of consciousness as the generalization involving teacher in a learning process about 4-dimensional reality basis and what physical experience demonstrates, an individual unit wavelength. Or it can be a frequency event, since, as spheres, because they are closest packed in spherical agglomeration. The spherical agglomerations are unit radius spheres. It becomes self-defeating to educate us as if atoms do not close pack, and that the reality basis of our inherited biases and self-propelled motivations, whether of the BS, belief system, complexes, political, religion, justice, or military belief system. Or it may simply concern the subconsciously fearful cautionaries. In any case, it will be a survival condition imposed by the teacher whose presence is not visible but is subliminal in memory to some degree of unconscionable or conscionable awareness. The evolution of our awareness and finite resolution of the omniconsiderate, omnirational coordination of thought, language, reality requires closest packing spheres lessons, because these spheres are integrals of the truth of all the conceptualities. This is in stark contrast to the parallel and rectilinear coordination that academically has assured intellect's education that it is on the right track and consequently has every substantive authority to rule the world. By rule, I mean measure and authorize. All that we measure and authorize referentially to a conceptuality has not removed the slums of the world's most stunning contradictions, nor do the most highly educated people in our world seem able to do more ultimately than maintaining and self-perpetuating the status quo. They have learned to accept the great disparities as a threat that more security will securely rectify. We have to wonder then how ludicrous or how utterly devastating our educated ignorance actually is when desperate people in the slums of Johannesburg, South Africa, and other supposedly thriving metropolitan centers will kill for a cell phone, will burglarize a home, rape, kill, and steal electronic devices, money, jewels to sell for food or drugs, or cherish the communication device as a status symbol. Does it always have to be a matter of parallel realities and horribly ignored or comprehensively considered overlapping encroachments? This not only bears a witness of others' learned values, it also reveals the teacher's influence on the communication of ideas and integrities and what the teachers omitted altogether at the outset. Was it universe? Was it the communication circuitry design and the minimum circuit, a triangle? Was it common sense about the convergent terminus center into which nature provides us with polyhedron components and a rational means of resolving problems? Nature uses a four-dimensional corner of the four-dimensional planes of the tetrahedron. So how can we forever ignore convergence and divergence elementary to the economics that the human mind requires for every possible solution? When it comes to circuits and circuitry design, the angle aspect depends on recognizing circles, cycles, great circles, spheres, spherical triangles, a polygon, a polyhedron. We cannot ignore this and pridefully claim that ours is the best kindergarten education in the whole world. Nor can the billionaires, as a result of computer technology, convince me they are not cosmically responsible for getting into everyone's reality, the very basis and awareness evolution essential for a world-around communication process. How absolutely absurd is it to admire the millionaire and the billionaire's mansions and gated communities within a stone's throw of the most desperate people? Can't they see? Can't they feel how important the communications process is? Don't they realize that the articulations educate and what they show the world is what their teachers showed them? It is, alas, that subconsciously held cautionary or more consciously coordinated cosmic awareness of the universe's circuitry design. Let us educate about what nature is doing, not what politics, religion, justice, and the military expectations compel us to do. Let us learn about the economics of universe while recognizing that of all the social sciences, only economics is other than special case. Let us imagine that every day we must endure an unsatisfied longing to escape the decadence of the slum box house, with its desperately constructed makeshift electric wiring, along with a never-satisfied hunger for the communications devices that our prosperity make available in fairly easier survival circumstances for us to obtain. Let us respect what produces a stable, systematic model of universal tetrahedrons before complacence about our good fortune settles into the most unconscious concern for what we allow to imprison others. Where such imprisoning exists, so too is the very devastation that corrupts stability. No weapons of security forces can alleviate threats of corruption and instability because ignorance is the prison, and prison regenerate ignorance. If we imprison our own psyche, it must be from something that the teacher did not understand about tetrahedral growth and vector equilibrium growth from unity. Synergetics 260.50. Precession of two sets of 10 closest packed spheres is relevant. On one hand, we have 10 closest packed spheres. On the other hand, we have 12 around one closest packed spheres. But at minimum, we have 3 equal spheres for one triangle, 4 equal spheres for one tetrahedron, 5 unit radius spheres for an octahedron, 6 spheres around one for a hexagon with 12 vectors. It permits us to start with the whole, W-H-O-L-E, and to differentiate and integrate other aspects and patterns of perspective reality. We can erase the spheres and see the vectors, whether it is 3, 4, 5 spheres or 6 around one on a plane, that perceptually show us vectorial geometry at an elementary conceptuality. The law of truth, and also the truth of all conceptuality, is simply at the teacher and the student's fingertips for our conceptual and reasoning mind more fully to appreciate the environment of thought and where a wholeness, W-H-O-L-E-N-E-S-S, of the involvement field can take the communication process. Gratefully, faithfully, eternally, Christina Herlofson.